You've probably seen the videos of people making rankings of the best vehicles in GTA, but most of those vehicles are like 2 or 3 million. You however don't have that much, or rather spend it on something else, at least for now. That's why in this video I will give you reasonably priced options for most classes in the game. First we will start with the sports class. The top of this class has amazing cars like the Italy GTO, Bench GTS, but those are just shy of $2 million. A little further down we have the Pariah, which is still 1.4 million. Then a little bit further down, again we have the Paragon R, which is pretty grippy and also has decent speed. And it's priced at only 905,000, but still 905,000 is quite a lot. However, if you move down a tiny bit more, not even that much, we have the best bargain in the class, with the LG RH8 at 95,000 or free if you registered for Social Club. It used to be the fastest sports car back in 2013 and also actually quite a while after that. It's still pretty decent, but obviously faster cars like the ones I mentioned before will overtake it with basically zero effort. But for the incredible price tag of $0 for most people, you can't really complain too much for a car that actually performs relatively well like this. The muscle class is similar to the sports class, as the top vehicles like the Buffalo STX and Dominator GT are priced at around 2.2 million, obviously way too much. Moving down however, we have the Yosemite, which still performs pretty well, with impressive grip at a reasonable price of 485,000. However, if you prefer speed over grip, you can get a real bargain with the Pisswasser Dominator, which is priced at 315,000. But it's free for most players, as it is a gift for returning players. The next class is a lot easier. It is the Sedans class. This class has 6 vehicles very close in performance at the top of the class. 2 of these are actually very reasonably priced. It is the Schefter V12 and also its armored variant. They're priced at 116,000 and 325,000 respectively. You can't go wrong with these cars. They boast a great top speed and will even beat the more expensive sedans on a lot of tracks if they feature longer straights. But even on more twisty circuits, it's still very possible to beat the other sedans if you're a skilled enough driver. The SUVs class, much like the sedans class, has a car on the top of the class that is quite cheap and also has a very high top speed. It is a Pegassi Taurus, which has a price tag of 498,000, which compared to the other high performance SUVs is about 1.2 million cheaper, making this a great bargain for a very fast car. Although once again, like the sedans, it is a bit hard to handle, but if you get used to it, it can be a very powerful car. The next class is a tricky one, as it historically always has been decently expensive. It is the Sports Classic class. Top of the class is the Turismo Classic, which also happens to be my pick for this video. Even though it has a price tag of 705,000, it somehow manages to be the cheapest car in the top of the class. Of the next 12 cars in the class, performance wise, it is actually the cheapest. So the 13th fastest car, the Retinue, which is still 615k, is the first one that's actually cheaper. And the rest of the class has a similarly high price tag. There are a certain number of cars all the way in the bottom that might be a bit cheaper, but the rest of the class is still very similarly priced. Next up we have the Supers class, which is challenging. Therefore I will give you a couple options depending on how much you want to spend. So first of all, the top of the class is very fast, but also very expensive, with prices ranging from 2.7 to 4.5 million. However, relatively close to the top of the class, just outside, there is the Wagner, which costs only 1.535 million. It however still boasts impressive grip and good speed, and will still be able to win races in the right hands. If you however don't have 1.5 million, we can halve this and go for the Zentorno, which is a bit slower but still pretty decent at a price of 725,000. Below this price point your performance is going to take a very big hit. The Zentorno already is slower than the top sports cars, and any cheaper car would not even be competitive in mid-tier sports class races. In the motorcycles class we have bikes ranging from 2.2 million to 976,000 in the top 5. Except for one, which is the Body 801. This bike, which has been in the game from release, is still pretty competitive and only costs 15,000. If you're driving it right, it's definitely still able to win races quite easily. In the Coupe class we have a very affordable option, not too far away from the top. The Xeon. It is a nice drive for only 60,000, which is around 1.5 million cheaper than the two fastest coupes. It will be beaten most times, but if you're a decent driver, you definitely stand a chance. In the compact class there is sadly only one viable car, which is the BF Club at a price of 1.2 million. If you however are really good and your opponents aren't, you could get away with using Brioso R8, which is only 155,000, although the performance deficit is quite large. In the final class we're going to be looking at, it is often actually better to pick the cheaper option. I'm of course talking about the off-road class, which has really fast and expensive cars like the Draugr at 1.87 million and Vagrant at 2.214 million at the top of the class. But in a lot of scenarios these two get beaten by two other vehicles for a fraction of the price. I'm of course talking about the BF400 and Sanchez, priced at 95,000 and 7,000 respectively. These bikes have the ability to dominate off-road races quite easily, due to the narrow frame and great top speed on off-road sections. To conclude, some of the best affordable options in each class are: in the sports class we have the Elegy RH8 at a price of 95,000 or free. In the muscle class we have the Pisswasser Dominator for 315,000 or free for most people. Then, in the sedans class we have the Schäfter V12 at a price of 116,000, or the armored variant for a little bit more, around 300,000. Then, in the SUVs class we have the Taurus at 498,000, so far the most expensive class, but still definitely worth it. The Sports Classic class takes pricing to a new level, with its Turismo classing at 705,000, but at the top of its class it's definitely worth buying. Then the Supers class, which obviously is gonna be very expensive, we have the Wagner at 1.535 million. I decided not to put the Zentorno here because it's definitely lacking and the Wagner gets quite close to the top. In the motorcycles class we have the Bali 801 at only 15,000, which still has very great performance. For the coupes we have the Xeon at 60,000, which is a bargain, but definitely lacks a little bit against its competition. In compacts we have the Brioso R8 at 155,000, which definitely has struggled competing against the top, but is still a pretty decent car. In off-road we have the Sanchez with 7,000, although the BF400 might perform a tiny bit better, 7,000 is just too nice of a number to not include here. So in total we spent about 3.5 million on this, which is less than the price of, for example here, a Debauchi Champion at 3.75 million. So you could have all these cars which are all great performing for the price of this car, which actually performs really bad in the Supers class.